And we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome, Ian.
Hey, how you doing, Reed?
Excellent. Happy to have you with us tonight. I want to tell our viewers a little bit about Ian Eastwood as I know him. I think it was Nexus at the time. There's been a lot of different names along the way. I saw you up on a panel first, talking to kids, advising parents, and I thought you were a really smart man. Do you remember that day?
I do remember that day, actually. I do remember
that. Then on that same weekend, you don't know this, at the end of the convention that we were on, it was Boston. This guy, probably like early 20s, you got done teaching class, and he said, he dropped to his knees in the ballroom, and he was like, "Thank you, Jesus."
That's amazing.
All right, so I'm like, okay, I want to check this kid out. And I don't mean kid in a bad way. I mean artist. So this is what I discovered. You are an artist, my friend. You are a person who has paved your own path from everything that I can see. You don't seem to follow what other people do. I think you merge artistry into video, and it's a feeling, and it's a combined art. It isn't just dance as an art.
Yeah.
And I feel like you put the future generation in good hands. How's that for
wow? That's quite an intro. Oh man, I have you introduce me everywhere.
I mean it. And one of the reasons I'm so excited to talk to you tonight is because my show is for a lot of dance teachers and studio owners, and they mostly took a different journey than you have. And I'd love for people to hear that there are other ways to make something of yourself.
Yeah.
So, Ian.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Let's start off with before dance, like before age 10. What was little Ian like?
So I was always, when I was younger, I was really shy. I was really, really shy, and I was more observant of everything rather than like speaking and acting on things. I'm an only child. So I didn't have any brothers or sisters, but on my mom's side, I come from a big family, the Latorias, one of 20 kids. On my mom's side, her grandfather is one of 20 kids. So our family was the largest Italian American family in America, and they were actually brought like to the World's Fair and celebrated and everything. And so I came from a huge big Italian family on one side, but then was an only child in the home. So it was like kind of a bizarre experience because I was so used to being around so many people and being around people that are like family, but I don't like know their name, and everybody has the same name. And, it was kind of like a weird experience, but it was really cool. And it just like made me observe a lot because I didn't necessarily have a little brother or sister to kind of guide me or for me to influence. It was really just like for me to absorb and see everything. And as far as interests, I'll probably talk about it later, but my parents being who they were, it shaped a lot of me. So things outside of that, I was really only basically into like baseball and just there wasn't really as many things. It was like really kind of shaped quite a bit, by my family and just kind of what we have going on in our house.
I wanted to ask you, when I was doing a little research. You had
Yeah.
mentioned baseball. Were you good at it?
I was pretty good. I just, I'm naturally athletic as a dancer, and that kind of translated to baseball. I was good at baseball. My dad would tell me I was better than I believed I was, but that was part of it for me, is that I grew up in a baseball town. So all of my friends took baseball very, very seriously. And I was just a shy, sweet kid. So for a lot of my friends that, maybe had a bunch of older brothers and were just like ruthless around the house, I was like kind of a shy, sensitive, sweet kid. So being like really aggressive in sports was a bit of a thing for me to overcome. I was naturally competitive, but I wasn't like an in your face type of a person. I didn't like have that in my nature. So it's weird. It's like I was good at baseball, but because I was nervous to be as good as like my friends and other people, it like hindered my overall ability to be like really great at the sport. Also, it's like such a individualized pressure moment sport. It's like you versus the pitcher. It's you at, you could drop the ball out of everybody in the field. And, a lot of other sports kind of have everybody moving around and it's like this mix, but baseball is very like, and it's this person, that it's all relying on. And even though I like the stakes of it, it kind of like definitely got to me just a little bit. So when I found dance, it was really different. Yeah.
All right. So I want to go somewhere else, but for our listeners, write in the comments where you're from. I'm anxious to see who's watching and listening tonight.
Yeah.
Ian, tell me about Peter and Julia.
Yeah. So my parents are probably my biggest idols, as well as probably like my biggest influence just on a day-to-day basis. So my parents, they met in art school in the 80s in Chicago, and they ended up getting oddly into finance, and my dad became a trader and everything, and they were working on the trading floor in the 80s and then through the beginning of the 90s. But my dad was also doing commercial art. So my dad was doing portraits and illustrations, and like he had done work for the Chicago Marathon and for like polo and just other things. And my mom was kind of helping manage him almost like as an artist as well along that time. And then when I came around, my mom didn't really want to work on the trading floor anymore. So she wanted to, just stay home with me and be a mom. And while she was home, she realized, that there was like no good art classes in our community. So my mom, being the entrepreneur that she is, she's from a super big entrepreneurial family. They own a lot of different businesses and had a lot of, wore a lot of different hats. So my mom, being the entrepreneur that she was, she actually created an entire arts program that she wrote based off of like me as her son, and wrote out a whole arts program using like recyclable materials. She was way ahead of her time. This is like 95 or something like that. So she was pretty far ahead. And also at the time, it wasn't even just that there were bad art classes. There were no art classes besides public school art classes. And, if you have an artistically inclined kid, they might not know that they even like art until, 6, 7, 8 years old. And that would have to be if they have a good art teacher that teaches, in a way that speaks to them as a kid. And they very easily, at a public school could just not have that. So my mom wrote this entire program around me. She started with 6 students. And by the end of it, both of my parents were running programs out of our house 4 days a week. They had over 120 20 students at a time per session. So probably in the thousands over time. They had done it for 10 years. And my mom ran, I believe, 2 separate programs for babies, for younger kids, toddlers. And then my dad was running drawing classes for the older kids, cartooning classes for the in-between kids, and advanced drawing for kids that were like about to go into college. So we literally ran the business out of our home that I grew up in. So my parents were running, their own private business in our basement, in our backyard, using recyclable materials, having hundreds of people flowing in and out through our house every single week. And every 6 weeks, my parents would actually do what they called an art gallery. So they turned our house into an entire art gallery for all of the students. And there would just be like hundreds of people in my childhood home where I spend all my days, Sunday mornings watching cartoons, whatever. And now suddenly I'm a host with my parents to hundreds of people every 6 weeks. And and I just got really used to that. I got really used to making something out of nothing and, using what you have. And go ahead, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say that explains all of it as far as the artist and what you are and what you do. That made the first. So I want to take you somewhere else.
Yeah.
I wrote this down. Age 10, you walked into a dance class, Mr. Sydney teaching Thriller, okay? Yeah. That was literally your first dance class?
My first dance class, ever.
Tell everybody about Mr. Sydney.
So Mr. Sydney he's an incredible person. Every time I tell this story, I think about how I got to find him and reach back out to him. So if someone knows him, please, have him contact me. Mr. Sydney was this amazing, incredible guy from the south side of Chicago. He would take the L train up to Oak Park, Illinois, where I lived as a child. And he would bring his big CD booklet, and he would just bring his huge, infectious smile on his face. And he was an incredible teacher to young kids, in particular, me. And he just had an infectious way about him that just made dance so accessible and so exciting. And, sometimes teachers like that definitely don't get enough credit, because at the end of the day, for a lot of people, that first experience with dance, makes or breaks a lot of times people's interest in something, an entire like art form and an entire craft, because they might like something, but the moment that they go to do something, depending on the experience of, the situation, it could, decide whether they do it forever or never again. And, he just made the experience so enjoyable that I decided, this was something I wanted to do forever. And also, my parents being the parents they were just so kind to him that they would create opportunities for me that I didn't even understand were opportunities, just because they were nice. So they would do things like invite him over to dinner, and I would be sitting with my teacher, and I thought it was so cool, but I didn't realize that it was nice for my teacher to come to a nice house and have a nice dinner and all these things. I just thought it was so cool. So my parents were always creating opportunity for me, just even in, being themselves, just being gracious.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So after that, I was really impressed with this. Giordano.
Yeah. Giordano Jazz.
My mother was a Gus Giordano assistant. I took classes from him. I didn't know that you had that in your background. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so my parents, both being craftsmen, they knew that, they respected dance as an art form immediately. So for them, it was like they quickly realized that I was outpacing the training that was available to me locally because of just my natural interest in it. And my parents just being real resourceful and just caring about my education and where their money was going, they did the research for the best, dance companies in Chicago. And obviously Giordano was legendary for what he did with jazz. And I actually started attending. My parents were driving me basically an hour and a half to and from once a week to get outside of local training in Chicago and get, more higher level training at Giordano Jazz. And I joined the youth program there. I was busting my butt. I was taking jazz there for like 3 years. I took ballet for another 2 years. I was doing all the styles. And because at the time it was very, very, very pushed upon you that you cannot be a dancer and a professional dancer unless you do know absolutely all styles. Which I do have like a different take on in this generation, but I do appreciate that mindset forced me to open my mind to actually get a lot of training for my body that now when I look, 15 years later, that a lot of people that just were doing hip hop don't have a lot of body awareness and just understanding of lines and just other things that in my professional career as a choreographer, not just as a, artist and creator, have really paid off. So I actually got to meet Gus a few times. He was, I think, wheelchair bound by the time I was meeting him, but it was pretty cool. And, that experience of dance is definitely a bit of a lost one, stepping into a dance studio that you can feel the legendary dancing and history that's going on in there. I do miss that feeling a lot in dance.
Listen, because of my viewers are a lot of teachers and studio owners.
Yeah.
Gus is a god, a legend in our field. And those that had the opportunity, just like you're passing on a piece of Gus every time because you experience that vibe and you were a part of that for a period of your training. How cool is that, my friend?
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. No, his studio was also beautiful. It was like beautiful. Like it felt amazing to dance in. It was this gargantuan room. And my teacher, my jazz teacher, Richard Smith, he was an incredible disciplinarian, but also like, I don't know, he just had a way of, he was a great teacher. He was just a great teacher. And
so we put out a shout out to Richard Smith.
Yeah, shout out to Richard Smith. He was just he cracked the whip on me, and I could never definitely ever repay him for that. And it was just so cool because there wasn't a ton of kids at the time that were super interested on spending their Saturday morning learning, especially boys, learning jazz for 2-3 hours in the middle of the afternoon. I previously 2 years before that was in baseball practice and baseball games, so it was a cool experience for me because it was such a, like, when I look back, it was very like, I don't know, it was so peaceful and just cinematic. There was the stage, he still had the stage, like the convention style stages that we do. Like he had the stage in the studio.
Yes.
Still from the era. And I could look at the photos from, like the 80s and everything and see like, just a jam-packed room of people doing jazz, like hundreds of people in a convention style experience, but inside of a dance studio that was owned by somebody.
And it was in Evanston. It was not in Chicago. People used to go to Evanston, Illinois.
Yeah, it's very particular, and wow, what a feat, to accomplish pre-internet. And I mean, hats off, that's really incredible. And actually, fun fact, what started my higher level training past Giordano, that was also my next stepping stone, was because my parents literally saw a flyer for Monsters of Hip Hop on the physical bulletin board at Giordano.
Okay, that's where I want to go next. I saw that you wrote that when you walked into Monsters of Hip Hop, you wanted to run out.
Yeah.
Tell everybody why or what that experience was like.
So this is no internet with dance yet. So I only had seen dance what was immediately in front of my face, and Michael Jackson music videos on a DVD. My parents, we were the last people that I knew to get cable. So I never watched music videos until I was like 10 or 11. And then sometimes my dad would bring me down to the office at work, and that was my time to use the internet, which I would watch music videos on. And that didn't start till I was 11 or 12. So I literally never saw dance outside of the local dance studio and then Giordano dance studio. And then what I was watching Michael Jackson clips, and then Monsters of Hip Hop was the first time I'm ever seeing like hip hop basically in a high level professional setting. And I was always the best kid. I was a big fish in a small pond. So I came into the intermediate room and found out there was like hundreds of kids, maybe not hundreds at the time, maybe like, 60 or 70, but I'd never seen any more than 5, So to walk in a room with like 60 kids who are following advanced choreography. I mean, at the time I was really just doing like hip hop choreography in Chicago was like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and a groove and a groove and a groove and step. It was not like what was happening at Monsters. And Nappy Tabs was my first class, and they're doing 1E and a 2E and a click, click, click and smooth, switch, switch, da 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 da. And I'm just like looking at it like, holy cow, And I had just seen You Got Served for the first time that year when it came out. So I was just getting it, like really like starting to kind of understand what a crew was and what, I was joining local hip hop crews in Chicago. And so the whole world and culture of hip hop and dance and all of that was like all unwinding to me all at once. And Monsters was just like overwhelming. I just felt like there's no way that I was as good as these kids. I didn't even know what I was looking at. I'd never seen dance like that ever before in front of my face. So I was just really intimidated.
Where'd you go next? Obviously that was a breakthrough for you, right?
Yeah. So basically, big shout out to Gio Hubella. Gio was my very first dance scholarship ever for anything. And I was 11. So I think I was 11 or 12 when I went to my first Monsters in the Hyatt in Chicago, Hyatt Regency, right in Chicago. I'll never forget. It was St. Patrick's Day. They dyed the river green, and I got my very first scholarship from Gio because I was feeling really discouraged after the audition because I'd never auditioned for anything before. And I'm a bit of a perfectionist and control freak, unfortunately. So that's a situation that when you're a kid and you're learning you have those issues is an overwhelming experience. But I over-assumed the situation and actually, got a scholarship in the end. My parents really encouraged me to just get back in there. And that changed everything, basically.
So now, what happened? You created some dance videos on YouTube? I know I'm simplifying.
Something like that. Yeah, so basically, at the time, I was training locally and getting my name up locally, and then because that's the only way you could at the time. And then at the very beginning of the internet, YouTube videos. So YouTube started in 2005. I made my account in February of 2006 was when I uploaded my very first video. So I was within the first year of YouTube starting, which people, believe it or not, is actually over 13 years now. So on my exact same YouTube channel that I upload my videos to today, you can literally go to my first video and I'm actually 12 years old and now I'm 27 years old. So I've literally grown up on YouTube, and basically at the time it was a completely different space. It was really much more about what up, Nancy? Hold on. Why is my dad calling me? He should know that I'm on this thing.
He might be calling to tell you you're doing a good job.
Let me tell him that I'm on this. Yeah, so it was basically just a totally different space at the time. So at the time, people were only on AIM, Instant Messenger, and MySpace. So people were utilizing YouTube as a way to get their videos embedded on their MySpace page. So I don't know why, but from the moment that I had, like, we had internet access at my house when I was 11 and on our Dell computer, that's where my life changed overnight. So it wasn't just dance itself, but it was also my access to the internet and my obsession with technology. So basically, go ahead.
I want to hear about that first video. What was it?
Yeah, so the first video is just me freestyling at a Monsters of Hip Hop, actually with another important choreographer named Tony Czar. I didn't even know that was him at the time, but we were in the same freestyle video. So basically, my dad was filming all the dance events on our Sony HD Handycam, which actually shot on tape. And I don't know how it happened really, but at some point in time, I was determined to try and get the video from the very first video I ever saw on the internet was Tucker Barkley doing Gil's choreography in a Boogie Zone class. So the first video I ever saw on the internet ever was Tucker dancing in Gil's class at Boogie Zone. And then that was on Tucker's MySpace page because I was a big fan of Tucker. His MySpace name was Snowcat. I'll never forget it. And so basically I realized, like, wait, YouTube. And then I just, because of the name, I realized, oh, YouTube's like, you can put yourself, this is how early on the concept was. I was like, oh, you can put a video of yourself on the internet. Like, that's awesome, you know? So I basically was like, that sounds so ancient to say, but it is a fact. And I was like, wow, so I have all these cool videos that my dad shot. There's got to be a way that I can get my videos on the internet. That's cool. I didn't even really know what the point of it was, but I just thought it was literally cool. So I somehow figured out with the chords from the box, like, I just kept messing around with it. I just literally was fumbling around with the chords. And then this program popped up. I don't even remember what the program was called, but it was like something happened in the computer when you plug the camera in, and it naturally just happened. And so I don't know what happened, but I just self-taught myself essentially how to put a video onto a computer, edit a video, create an account on YouTube, upload the video to an account, and then embed the video into my MySpace page at like 11 or 12 years old. And I have no clue how I figured that out, but I think I was just naturally intrigued and determined by it and had the capability.
Wait, so now for our viewers, how many YouTube followers do you have?
At the time?
No, now.
770,000, something like that.
How many views, my friend?
I don't know. We can check. I haven't. It's interesting because YouTube has not become the main platform anymore, but I have still maintained a big audience. But it's interesting that there's more activity on Instagram. Okay, so let's see, 774. They used to just say views. Let me see here. 87,437,000 views. Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever given yourself a pat on the back for that?
Honestly, not that much. You know what? That was pretty crazy to read. I'm not gonna lie to you. That was pretty crazy to read. I never really, that's awesome. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
So tell everybody, I know you're a choreographer. You've worked with some awesome people. Tell us a little bit about someone you've worked with that you felt like, wow, I pulled that off. That was a goal I've always wanted.
So my absolute favorite job I probably ever did was I got the chance to choreograph for one of my biggest inspirations. His name is Donald Glover, also goes by Childish Gambino. And the reason why he's like one of my biggest idols is because he's a multifaceted artist. You know, he does writing, acting, music, rap, you know, production, you name it. And so naturally for me, he was like a really, really big inspiration. And on top of it, in particular, my biggest inspiration to ever start doing anything was Smooth Criminal. Not just because of the dancing, but because of the overall, wow, someone said their mom works at OPRF HS. That's my high school.
Really?
Yeah. Say what's up to your mom, Jasmyn. Dang. So yeah, so that was like my first inspiration, not only just because of the dancing, but because of the whole aura, you know, like the coolness of it, like the way it was shot, the outfits, the style, everything. So when Donald started coming out with music videos, it really spoke to me because, you know, he was delivering very artistic, cerebral, art piece style music videos, which in this generation was becoming like pretty rare. You know, a lot of people were still spending money maybe on a video, but they definitely weren't spending the time on like the cohesiveness and overall message in general. And I just noticed that everything he put out was so well thought. And I basically just made it a goal of mine to work with him. And so I put it down on my list, and there was a guy that me and my dad were briefly working with for a little while. And he had asked me in our first meeting, you know, like, what's something you want to do? And I said, I want to work with Childish Gambino. I'm not really sure the capacity, but that's something I really want to do immediately. I have bigger goals, but you know, that's something I want to do immediately. And I don't know how, because he doesn't put out a lot of music, and he's probably incredibly selective just based off of, you know, what I see out of him and what he puts out. I can tell he's not just, you know, accepting everybody into the team. So I don't know, but, you know, that would be cool. So he says he knows him because they had some connections through his time doing comedy. And the guy that was helping us, Dan Wiener, he was for a while doing a lot of PR. So he was really connected to people. And so basically he said to me, hey, send me anything that you have to his music, and I'll send it to his team, and we'll just see what's up. And so I took he had just dropped a mixtape, and I had done this solo to one of his songs that was a spoken word. And it was like all my wordplay, basically a culmination of the style I had been curating within choreography in particular for like the last like 5 or 6 years before that. So, you know, I was definitely in my element, and I didn't ever think that was going to see the light of day. The clip was going to see the light of day. It was just for the classroom. So I basically uploaded it to a private link on YouTube. I sent it to the guy. I was like, here you go. And before I had even gotten back to my house from the meeting, he called me up and he was like, hey, you know, I had a convention that weekend. He was like, hey, you said you were leaving this weekend, right? And I was like, oh yeah, I got to, you know, get on my flight in the morning. And he was like, you're going to want to cancel your flight. You're going to meet Donald tomorrow. Within 20 minutes of me even sending the clip, it had like 1 view, and it was Donald.
Wow.
And basically I had no idea what that meant, but I canceled my flight, you know, and I met him the next day. And I got there early, and I was talking to his manager, and we were chilling, and I could tell they were kind of feeling me out, you know. And he pulled up, and like the very first thing, like one of my biggest idols said to me was like, I'm a big fan of your work. I really like your work. And I was just like, I couldn't even believe it. I actually just couldn't even believe it. I was like, this is something I just said yesterday.
How long ago was that?
It was 2014. Yeah, this is 2014. So I had really only had like a couple big credits at this time. I basically had only done like Zendaya, and I had just recently, like barely just recently done the, no, actually I hadn't even done that yet. I was going to say a Chance the Rapper video, but that was actually after I did Sober. So yeah, so basically I just met him, and I didn't know, but I think he had another choreographer in place already. And I essentially like took the job by my clip being such a fit for like what he was looking for. Cause he had just gotten done with a gig and he had just kind of mentioned it to the choreographer because in the treatment, there was only room for like this like very small section of dancing, maybe like 2 8 counts or something like that. So he didn't really like super need a choreographer for the whole thing. But basically what happened was I realized how dope of an artist he was because when we were on our way out from the departure, he had just given me like full credit and taken the time to meet with me. And then right when I was leaving, he said something that I didn't understand for like almost 2 days, where he was like, so like, if we go with you, are you basically going to be able to handle it essentially? And I was like, yeah, this is all I do. Like I've been waiting for this moment basically for my whole life. Like I'm ready to go. And then what I understood later is that he didn't mean that in an insulting way at all. He literally was so not a judgmental person that he probably didn't watch any of my other work and probably literally just watched the clip and probably decided off of the video alone so he probably didn't even know that I was a professional choreographer, essentially. He didn't really know, I think, what I actually do. I think he just literally took what he saw on its merit and was like, this is what I want. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, so that was the best job I ever had. And I worked with him and his director, just the 3 of us. And so originally there was only like about 2 8 counts, like I said, to choreograph. And I got the treatment from him. And on our very first meeting, I had all of these ideas that were essentially movement direction and not choreography. But he like was so at comfort with himself and not insecure about himself creatively that he listened to every single idea I had and either tweaked or fully accepted every idea I had and ran with it. And it was like the greatest moment of my life. We sat there cross-legged, just me and Donald in a dance studio for like 3 hours talking about concepts for his music video.
Wow.
I'll just never, ever forget it. I'll never, ever forget it. And it was like the craziest thing.
And it's not going to stop, my friend, because you are an artist. I want to stop and ask you this question.
Yeah.
For young people that are listening, or maybe not so young, that have a dream of paving their own path.
Yeah.
That feel like they have something unique to bring to the table. What would you say?
I would say that you have to immediately step into the lifestyle of being like an artist and creative person in order to like really achieve the ultimate level that you can reach, because if you basically don't commit to the concept or to the idea, like not every idea works. I've had a lot of failed ideas, and then a lot of the beginnings of my ideas take a culmination of several ideas and failed ideas to actually make the big idea that pans out for me, that people see as a success. So people might just see me working on something, but it actually sometimes behind closed doors, I'm failing at quite a few things, maybe even if it's a financial success or whatever it may be. But the illusion is not that I'm failing, because I'm really aggressively pursuing something and letting it be known that I see myself as this thing, and people should see that as well, because I'm secure in it, because I live it every day. I think a lot of insecurity comes in artists when they're not on top of their craft. So I think security in the like confidence in the time that you put into your craft is like the number one best like way to spend your time, because I don't know, you can spend so much time wasting like thinking about doing something, the more time you just keep talking about doing something, the less time that you're doing it. So that's kind of like the advice I would give, because every idea is a good idea until maybe you do it. And you're never going to know
I'm so happy. I'm really happy to hear you say that you have failures, because you realize I do too. A lot of people they don't realize that, and their personal failures stop them from realizing there was something there. It just didn't work that way, you know?
Yeah, sometimes it just needs a readjustment. And then if you don't have trial and error, you're just expanding the amount of time between you and succeeding at like the thing that you want to do, you know?
Ooh, it tells me my camera's unplugged. I don't know what happened there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Now you're there's a little silhouette of an icon just
okay. I'm gonna keep going, see what happens with my camera.
Oh, Gil's on. Hey, Gil.
Gil's on, and let's see what else we got going on here. Jasmyn, it's on. So tell us, and I don't know if I can bring my camera back, but I guess that's not a bad headshot right there.
You look great.
And when you go live, you got to go with the flow. That is really funny. I'm going to plug the camera and see if a different one comes up. Okay. Where do you see yourself going? What are some of your future dreams?
So on a bigger scale, what I'd really love is basically to create bigger types of companies that can provide opportunity to creative people directly. Sometimes there's a lot of restraints and things that kind of keep dancers very, very low on the totem pole in the just in the order of things, in budgets and just in the way people respect dancers in general. So like a big goal of mine is to essentially create a way to educate the next generation of dancers that they also hold a lot of skill sets that as dancers could be utilized in a lot of other forms of entertainment that can help change the way that society looks at dancers. So a lot of times that I find as a dancer on set that, maybe me dancing in a music video doesn't look its best because maybe the DP doesn't understand dance. Maybe the producer doesn't understand dance. Maybe the director doesn't understand dance. Maybe the editor doesn't understand dance. Maybe the artist doesn't understand dance and the label. So if I can turn all of those people into people that understand dance or maybe were dancers, then dance in society and culture will like have a much bigger like respect and impact, because we're essentially like cut off in a sense. The problem is that dancers don't have like we have YouTube and we have the internet now, but prior to that, and even still including that, it's kind of like we have two hands tied behind our back, because even while putting our art form up, we're actually making money for other people. So like we're making money for the musical artist, which is cool because I'm glad that the music artist is getting, paid something, because a lot of music artists are getting screwed in the industry too. However, that being said, that shouldn't come out of us not ever being able to make any money off of what we do as artists. So like artists have art museums and art auctions, and literally the only way that most dancers can stay afloat is by teaching dance classes. And if they have to rely on commercial dance, it's very hard to pay the bills. And even being just a choreographer sometimes is very hard to pay the bills. You have to be a faceted person. But what I want to express to the new generation is that the discipline and understanding of timing in music that it takes to be a dancer, of like maybe one of 20 people on set, you actually could be the producer that is running the entire show and making sure the right dancers get booked and making sure the right choreographer gets booked and making sure that, the music is synced correctly and that it's to the right part of the song, and that all of these things that are like really just issues that dancers always just go, well, yep, that's what always happens to us. Instead, it could actually be, you know, built upon and like shed a light in some way.
I have a feeling that you will accomplish that goal, my friend. And
it's a big goal.
The community's in good hands with you leading the next generation. I mean that.
I appreciate that.
So as we close out this show tonight, first I want to say thank you for hanging out with me and our audience tonight. And also, what do you have for some closing words of wisdom for dancers who've been locked in for a while and feel like their passion is being squelched?
For those people, what I have to say is I totally, I actually completely understand, because I'm in the same headspace too, and we're all kind of going through it in different ways. It's a difficult time, but I think like what my strategy has been is taking the time to tap back into my inspiration, and just find things that are inside of and outside of dance that inspire me every single day. Like I said, I don't just see myself as an artist in dance, but just an artist across the board. So I can find a lot of inspiration in other things. And I think finding a way to adapt is a therapeutic thing to do, because it's kind of all you can do at this moment. If you don't focus on different ways to adapt to the time and how you can still express yourself, you can start to become like even more isolated and more like alone and feeling hopeless. But sometimes, even if it's, it sounds like horrible, but even if it's a bit of a busy project, sometimes it's good to be just doing something to watch the progress of something, you know, and see that something's going towards something. Like I said, even if the beginnings of that project fail, it could, while you're along the journey of it, it can inspire you to do something else. So I'm going to give like a perfect example that is actually what I've been focusing all my time on for the last, since I've been in the quarantine times. Basically, I had a side project idea with the people that I buy vintage clothes from. So I started getting really into the vintage t-shirt and clothing community, just like I nerd out about anything that I get into, and I couldn't just leave it at enjoying it. I also had to dive into now pursuing it in some way. So I have my two friends that I had this idea. I was looking at my garage one day and I was like, you know what? They turn their apartment into a private shop for appointments. And it's like my absolute favorite thing to do is to bring my guests and friends that come to LA to this private little shop and show it off to them. And so I thought, you know, what'd be cool is there's none of this in North Hollywood. Dancers don't have anything like this, you know? So it'd be cool if we did it, you know, in my neighborhood. And I was like, why don't we do it in my garage? And then before we knew it, a week before quarantine was happening, we were emptying my garage. I've had it for 3 years and never done anything to it. And before a week was over in quarantine, we had the shell of a studio. And by 2 weeks in, I decided, oh, I'm not just going to do an appointment only shop. I'm going to make this a dance studio for myself. And then by 3 weeks in, I decided, oh, I'm actually going to shoot my online classes in this studio that I'm making. Then I invested into the floors, got the floors done, got the mirrors done, made an entire online program and developed that for 2 to 3 weeks. But at the beginning of that, none of that existed in my head, you know? So right. That's what I mean to say is and now that's my focus. That's now my literal job and income is my online program that I hadn't even conceptualized at the beginning of me changing my garage over and starting it. So that's like a perfect example, just to sometimes just start things that are just exciting to you.
Ian, because I know somebody will ask me, what's the name of your online program?
Yeah, so I'm using the platform called Patreon. Basically, it's really cool because any teacher or creator or any content maker of any kind can make any program that they want. I've made myself a 3-tiered program. Starting at $30, the first tier is either 1 to 2 workshops guaranteed per month of me teaching a masterclass. I kind of innovated a really cool concept to where I actually shoot the class with 2 GoPros, one behind me and one in front of me at waist height, that create this mirror effect that it feels like you're like inside the dance studio, so you can catch all the details. So I'm really excited to start.
I'm sure it's awesome, my friend. I'm sure there is no detail that has not been ticked off.
Yeah, so I worked really hard on developing the way that I interact with my students. So yeah, there's 3 tiers. That's the first tier that's more affordable, and students can drop in or out every month. So it's like a month-long program. And then the second tier is really cool. Students never even got to do this unless they were literally I was directly mentoring them. I have a tier called Creation Process, which gives the workshop, but also gives a video from beginning to end in the studio when I have 0 moves to when I have the complete piece finished. And so those are actually 2-hour clips that are me making the piece from scratch, giving students notes as I'm creating the piece. And then the third tier, I actually directly mentor the students personally. So that's only 10 students per month. And I'm actually getting videos where they send me footage of them doing the routine, and I give them, I actually screen record myself giving them critiques on individual moves, how to improve, where their problems are coming in, all that. So yeah, my page is called, you can just go to www.patreon.com/Ian and then _ like my Instagram, Eastwood.
Awesome.
So yeah, so that's where everything's at.
Thank you so much, Ian. Thank you to all of our viewers, and we'll see you again soon. Happy Saturday night. It was great to talk dance.
Thanks so much, Ree. I appreciate you. And thanks to everybody. Love you, Gil. Love you, Nancy. Love everybody watching. Thank you guys so much.
Take care.
All right, later.